So, hello to everyone. My name is Raido, and I hope you're all having a wonderful community event. And as has become a tradition, I'm here to also update you on what's been happening in our open source community, what we've been doing with our tooling, what we plan to do, and other interesting news regarding our open source community. So, without further ado, let's get started with what we have been doing in the past year. And the first major thing I'd say we have done is that we have updated our GitHub repository and in fact multiple repositories to use Dependabot. So this doesn't mean that previously we didn't do dependency monitoring at all. Rather, we did it locally inside our SonarQube instance, but since we have started moving things more and more to the public side so that they're also visible in pull requests and other news, then we wanted to introduce Dependabot from GitHub, and this did necessitate some changes as well, such as for some reason GitHub doesn't really play too well with the regular Gradle definitions of versions. And we needed to introduce something that's called the Gradle version catalog, which is basically a YAML file that describes all of the libraries that are used in the various submodules and their versions. And after that, it has actually been working remarkably well. We set it up so that we get weekly update batches for our Java project and also our NPM packages. Of course, for security updates, we still do get fairly fast updates, so we do receive them daily as it is configured. And for security updates, of course, we always also look into the actual update and see if there's things that we need to update in older versions as well, so that there's no vulnerabilities there in the system. And the next big thing is our development Docker images, which I will talk about a bit more in depth in the next slide. However, just to mention that we do now have a fully working security server, central server, test CA, and even example services set up on Docker Compose, so that it's much easier for developers and others to actually run it and test Xroad. One change that we also did to the initial tests that were implemented last year already is the inclusion of packaging tests. So prior to this, we only built the latest Debian package, which was required for doing the end-to-end testing. However, now, since we've started migrating away from our internal pipelines on Jenkins to more public-facing tests, we also included Debian and RPM packages for all of the supported platforms on Xroad, so that for each pull request, we're able to verify that the code builds, it passes all of the tests, and it's also able to produce packages. So something that we'd like to take further with this is to also introduce support for actually older versions as well, so that we can test all of the supported versions, but that's still on the pipeline. And as far as migrating tools, we no longer have an internal SonarQube, so we rely fully on the Sonar Cloud version, which also allows our users on GitHub to see how the code quality is and what the reports show there. It did mean that we lost some plugins that we were using internally with SonarQube that aren't available on the cloud version. However, in practice, there have been replacements, such as, for instance, Dependabot itself. And also, regarding the Jenkins jobs, we now only really do have the packaging for the release version, and then also testing for the previous supported version, since that's something that we haven't been able to migrate to yet. And next, talking a bit more about the Docker development environment. So as mentioned, it's essentially a full environment. It has a central server, it has two security servers, one acting as the management security server and another for the consumer security server. The management security server also acts as the producer role for data exchanges. And also a test CA, as well as actually now making the test CA available as a container image, which it previously wasn't. So even if you aren't, for instance, using the environment with our Docker Compose file, you can still use the test CA from the GitHub container registry to actually get the test CA into your environment and utilize it for your own testing and development purposes. There are two ways to use the Docker Compose environment. One is to build it locally, so that means that you build the jar files and everything from scratch, and then it also then builds the container images and starts things up for you. So that's option one. And option two, if you just want to quickly test something, is to use the GitHub images on GitHub's container registry, and those can be used to fairly quickly and easily set up your own X-Road instance. And with that, also what helps is the quick start for initialization, which uses a curl script on the background to actually do the full setup process. So it initializes the central server, it initializes both security servers, it sets up the certificate authority, timestamping server, it sets up the test services. And to make sure that everything works, it also actually does send a message through the X-Road security server to see that the example adapter responds. So in that way, you can get a fully working test or development instance on your local machine within about 2 or 3 minutes. And most of that time actually is related to global configuration and it getting around to all of the required security servers and so forth. So that's something that the script still needs to wait on. And we also do use it in our development. So the developers use it as their development environments to test local changes. And we also utilize it in end-to-end tests so that we also keep an eye that the images themselves actually work properly and that the compose files are up to date. And then finally, looking towards the future, we still want to improve the information that we have available in our PRs. Currently, we do already have test reports on the GitHub pull requests on the actions themselves. However, it's text-based. It doesn't really show the full thing there because it just doesn't fit. We have so many tests and so many reports that there's a limitation to the amount of logs that GitHub allows you to display. So it means that some information is missing there. And we're looking to make the Allure pages available through GitHub Pages so that you can actually get far better information about your test reports than you currently have been able to, which hopefully will also make the process more painless and simpler. Then, of course, we are bringing more and more projects and builds to the actual GitHub actions. We have already migrated X-Road metrics to there, and also the catalog service that we are currently working on. However, in the future, we would like to include X-Road4j, the example adapter, and so forth. Pretty much everything that we work on, we would also like to have a GitHub test pull requests and show the information there. The next, something that's missing currently is that when you update the documentation, there actually aren't any checks for that yet. So we do test the code, we do build it and so forth, but if you're updating just the documentation, we skip the whole pipeline. And this means that the documentation, also in regards to how the Markdown itself is written, is not consistent. And actually, if we try to apply some rules there, it's pretty unhappy with the current state. So we would like to start introducing linting to our documentation as well, so that we, in addition to testing the code, actually test the quality of the documentation, at least in regards to the formatting rules and so forth, and to define certain rules that are uniform between our projects so that the files themselves are more uniform. So that's something that we would like to introduce to our repository, starting slow with certain rules and then enabling others. And then finally, we would like to enable linking between Confluence and GitHub, because currently there's a lot of information available on the knowledge base. but the people that are visiting GitHub, unfortunately, they don't get the benefit of that. So that's what we are looking to do in the community during the next year. And with that, thank you for listening.
Thank you, Raido, for your presentation. And we already got 6 questions on the platform. So shall we go through them together?
Yep, sounds good.
So based on your work with the X-Road development team, could you share a few key findings, practices, or ideas that other software projects could also benefit from?
Well, I think that our situation with the team is maybe a bit unique, since usually it's so that the development team and then the sort of product owners and so forth and the project managers, they're all a part of the same company or work in a different manner. But since we procure our developers through the procurement, it means that we sort of have a bit of a separation in that sense. But we've also felt that it's a benefit that it helps us keep our documentation up to date, since we are expecting developers to move and so forth. And it also means that we, with team changes, usually introduce new ideas to the pipeline, new processes that the new team might have ideas for. And I think my general takeaway from that and from my previous experience is that I find that this flexibility itself, it actually helps with the team atmosphere. It helps improve the processes and so forth. So I think what I would recommend is try to listen to the team as much as you can and introduce flexibility into your process and be open to new ideas and trying out new processes, see how they work.
Sounds very nice team. Congratulations for this team culture. I really like it. So next question. So someone trying X-Road, what is the best way to give feedback regarding X-Road software or feature requests?
For the community, the best way is to use either Slack to discuss things, or actually if you would like to present a change request or something specific, then perhaps even a better way would be to use the GitHub issues and GitHub discussions, as we also discussed in the previous year. And the reason for that is that it makes the information available for everyone, so that it isn't something that they need to find in Slack history, but rather it's conveniently next to the repository, next to the code, and they're able to actually get that information fairly easily without too much searching. Mm-hmm. So I think it helps everyone in general if the information is as public as possible.
Absolutely. And we have another couple of questions on the way you work. How many developers work on X-Road core development, and how are the roles and responsibilities shared within the team members?
I believe, and I haven't counted recently, but I believe it's 8 developers that are currently working on X-Road. And well, our responsibilities mostly are so that everyone tends to do everything. And the reason for that is that our backlog is dynamic. So there isn't a set of tickets that's meant for one person or meant for another person, but rather we have them prioritized, and then a developer that finishes their last task is able to take the new one, and they're able to work with it. So what we really like about it is the flexibility again, that we don't have to, for certain tickets, wait until a certain development resource is available. Rather, most are jacks of all trade, and they're able to take that ticket. And what we do have is certain responsibility roles that are like different hats. So we do have a person specifically that looks after our testing pipeline, so just to monitor the entire thing so that there isn't chaos, that everyone's doing it their own way, but rather we have someone that looks at the big picture, and then everyone pitches in on the actual testing itself, but someone to lay down the ground rules, so to say.
I see. And when it comes to contribution, do you get community contributions? And now could I contribute as an individual?
Well, I would say that we do get contributions, but of course not as much as we would like. I think part of that is that X-Road is considered quite a complicated product, and to actually understand it, you need to invest quite a bit of time. And I think while that is somewhat true, it's also maybe a case of perception. And there are certainly things that we would love to get contributions for that aren't code related. So they could be documentation updates, for instance. It could be updates to our GitHub actions in case there's something that someone knows we could do better there. That would be excellent. And hopefully soon we will also get our first contribution for translation for the X-Road user interfaces. So in the future, we are also hoping that translations are something that the community could help us with, so that the administrative interfaces would actually be translated into different languages and be kept up to date as well, because unfortunately we're not able to do it with our team for all of the languages that might be required for the front end.
I see. So your contribution is more than welcome. And I have another question related to that, to tease the contributor. Some certification program for developers?
Certification program, Yeah, well, we do have the academic course for X-Road developers. Also, it's for core developers that want to work on the X-Road code itself. And we also have some that are for actual developers that are just using X-Road. So we do have that, but at the moment there's no certification, so to say, for the actual development itself. So, and I don't see us, at least in the near future, requiring that as well, because it might be difficult to implement and monitor, especially with X-Road changing also quite a bit during the years. So people would need to recertify.
Yes, I imagine so many courses there would be to ask certification for. Questions keep coming in. How do you ensure the community is heard when making critical decisions about X-Road?
Well, whenever we are making a decision in the technical committee or on some other level, then we do always introduce the community point of view as well. And in addition to that, me and Petteri, who is our CTO, we try to present the community view so that we try to bring the bigger picture into play there when we are actually taking these decisions. And we do also have the community expert group that we would like to welcome everyone to join. It has unfortunately been more quiet than we would have maybe hoped, but it would be an excellent place to also voice your concerns about new features and ask questions about them.
Thank you, Raido. There are a couple more questions, but I'm afraid that we cannot address them now, but I'm sure that you'll be active on the platform to connect with the participants and answer to the questions. So thank you again for your presentation and your answers.